All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling UnitedHealth Group.
Big one, this one.
Yeah, you guys requested it, and we always listen. So we've been poring over all sorts of stuff, research, articles, even financial reports, to really get a sense of this healthcare behemoth.
Behemoth is right. They're absolutely massive.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? I mean, on the one hand, we're talking about the world's largest health insurer by revenue, just a global powerhouse.
Absolutely.
But then on the other hand, you've got all this controversy swirling around them. Acquisitions, lawsuits, a ransomware attack, and well, we'll get to the really shocking stuff later.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
For sure. So for those who maybe aren't super familiar with UnitedHealth Group, let's start with the basics. What exactly do they do, and how did they get so big?
Well, they've been around for a while, actually. Founded back in 1977, headquartered in Minnetonka, Minnesota.
Minnetonka.
Yep. Primarily operating in the U.S., though they do have some international presence.
Right, right.
And they're publicly traded, which means anyone can buy a piece of the pie, so to speak.
If you've got the cash.
Exactly. But their bread and butter is really health insurance. That's where they make the bulk of their money.
Okay, so that's the core business.
Right.
But you mentioned they've been on this acquisition spree, buying up all sorts of companies. It seems like they're not content with just being an insurer.
You're right. They've been very strategic about their growth. It's what they call vertical integration. Basically, they're buying up companies across the entire spectrum of healthcare services.
So not just insurance then.
Not even close. Think clinics, surgery centers, pharmacy benefit managers, even companies that handle healthcare payments.
Yeah.
They want to control every step of the process.
Wow. And how successful have they been at this?
Wildly successful. I mean, in 2018, they officially became the largest global healthcare company.
Really? Larger than like all the big pharmaceutical companies?
Bigger. Their revenue exceeded $226.2 billion that year, serving almost 115 million customers.
That's more people than some entire countries.
It is. They're a force to be reckoned with.
So let's break this down a bit. Can you give us some examples of these acquisitions and how they fit into this grand strategy of vertical integration?
Sure. Let's start with their 2012 purchase of Amil Participações, a Brazilian clinic company. That was a big move for them, costing $4.9 billion.
So next, in Brazil, that's interesting. So extending their reach internationally as well.
Right. But then in 2015, they made another significant acquisition, this time closer to home. They bought Catamaran, a pharmacy benefit management company, for $12.8 billion.
Okay, I've heard of pharmacy benefit managers, but I'm not entirely sure what they do. It sounds complicated.
They are, but they're a crucial part of the pharmaceutical market. Basically, they act as middlemen, negotiating drug prices with manufacturers on behalf of insurers like UnitedHealth Group.
Oh, I see. So they're the ones deciding which drugs get covered by insurance plans and how much they'll cost.
Exactly. And by acquiring Catamaran, UnitedHealth Group gained immense power in that arena. They basically control which drugs millions of Americans can access and at what price.
So controlling the flow of money in the pharmaceutical world? That's some serious leverage.
It is, and it's a prime example of their vertical integration strategy. They're not content with just insuring people. They want to control every aspect of healthcare.
And what are the implications of that, both good and bad?
Well, on the one hand, this consolidation could potentially streamline processes and maybe even lower costs down the line.
That sounds good, right? Less bureaucratic hassle, lower costs for patients.
It could be. But the flip side is that when you have less competition, you also risk higher prices and fewer choices for patients.
So it's not a simple equation.
Not at all. Take their 2017 acquisition of Surgical Care Affiliates, for example.
A network of surgical centers, right?
That's right. And this gives UnitedHealthcare, their insurance arm, a strong incentive to steer patients towards these own facilities.
Even if there might be better options elsewhere.
Potentially, yes. So you can see how this vertical integration can be a double-edged sword.
So it's not necessarily good or bad. It depends on the specific circumstances.
Exactly. And it's something we need to be mindful of as we examine UnitedHealth Group's growth and its impact on the healthcare system.
Now, you mentioned other acquisitions as well.
Oh, yeah, plenty more. In 2017, they also acquired DaVita's emergency care business. And in 2019, they went on a bit of a buying spree, picking up Equian, a healthcare payments company, and Diplomat Pharmacy.
Wow. So they're really building this massive interconnected network.
And it's raising some eyebrows, especially among regulators who are concerned about potential monopolies and the impact on patient choice.
It's almost like they're playing a real-life game of Monopoly, buying up all the property.
That's a good analogy. And speaking of monopoly, that brings us to another fascinating chapter in their story. The attempted acquisition of Change Healthcare.
Change Healthcare. Now, that name rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
They're a major player in healthcare IT and payment processing.
Ah, right. So squarely in UnitedHealth Group's wheelhouse. And they tried to buy them.
They did back in 2021, offered a whopping $7.84 billion for the company. But this time, they hit a snag.
What happened? Did someone outbid them?
No, it was the U.S. Department of Justice that stepped in and blocked the deal.
The government? Why would they get involved?
They cited antitrust concerns. Basically, they were worried that this acquisition would give UnitedHealth Group too much power and control over the healthcare market, potentially stifling competition.
So the government essentially said, hold on, you're getting too big for your britches.
Exactly. It was a major setback for UnitedHealth Group, but it also highlighted the growing scrutiny they're facing as they continue to expand their reach.
And what became of Change Healthcare after that?
Well, that's where things take a rather dramatic turn. Fast forward to February 2024, and Change Healthcare was hit by a massive ransomware attack.
Ransomware. You're kidding. What does that even mean?
It means a group of hackers essentially held their data hostage, demanding a ransom in exchange for not releasing sensitive information.
So, like digital extortion.
Exactly. This particular attack was carried out by a group known as Black Cat, and it caused major disruptions to patient prescriptions. People couldn't get the medications they needed because of this attack.
Wow, that's scary. And what did Change Healthcare do?
They tried to negotiate with the hackers and ended up paying a $22 million ransom to prevent further data leaks.
$22 million. That's a lot of money. Did it work? Did the hackers keep their word?
Unfortunately, no. Even after receiving the ransom, they still went ahead and leaked the stolen data.
So they got hit with this major attack, lost millions of dollars, and still had their data compromised. That's a nightmare scenario.
Absolutely. And the financial fallout was even worse than the ransom payment. The total damage from the attack is estimated to be around $870 million.
That's just staggering. And what about the patients whose data was stolen? What are the implications for them?
That's a huge concern. We're talking about sensitive medical information, prescription histories, potentially even financial data, the risk of identity theft, medical fraud, all sorts of things. It's very real.
So on top of everything else, you have this massive breach of patient privacy.
Exactly. And it raises a lot of questions. Could this attack have been prevented if UnitedHealth Group had successfully acquired Change Healthcare? Would their cybersecurity infrastructure have been stronger? Or would a larger combined company have been an even bigger target?
It's hard to say for sure, but it certainly highlights the risks involved in this kind of consolidation, especially when you're dealing with such sensitive information.
And it underscores the need for robust cybersecurity measures, not just for Change Healthcare, but for any company handling patient data.
So we've talked about their growth through acquisitions and this major cybersecurity breach. But there's another aspect of UnitedHealth Group we need to address, their public image. And it's not exactly squeaky clean, is it?
You could say that. Their public perception has taken a hit, especially in recent years.
Why is that? What are people so upset about?
Well, one of the biggest criticisms is their high rate of denying medical claims. People are struggling to get the care they need because their claims are being rejected.
And this isn't just anecdotal evidence, right? There's actual data to back this up.
Oh, absolutely. A Value Penguin analysis found that UnitedHealthcare, their insurance arm, denies about 1/3 of medical claims submitted.
1/3.
Oh.
That's a lot.
It is, and it's double the industry average. They have the highest denial rate among all major insurers.
Wow. So for every 3 claims submitted, 1 gets rejected. That's got to be incredibly frustrating for patients.
It is. Imagine you're sick, you need medical attention, and your insurance company tells you, nope, not covered. It's a nightmare scenario for people who are already dealing with health issues.
And it feeds into this narrative of insurance companies prioritizing profits over patients.
Exactly. And it's contributing to the growing dissatisfaction with the U.S. healthcare system as a whole. People are losing trust in the very institutions that are supposed to be there to help them.
And sadly, this frustration and anger has boiled over in a way that none of us could have predicted.
You're referring to the murder of Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealth Group.
Yes. On December 4th, 2024, he was killed outside a Hilton hotel in New York City. And what's even more shocking than the murder itself was the public's reaction to his death.
I know. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. Instead of mourning, there was this outpouring of, I don't know, almost glee on social media. People were openly celebrating his death, calling him a villain, a symbol of corporate greed.
It was chilling, to be honest. It really exposed the deep-seated resentment and anger that many Americans feel towards the healthcare industry.
And towards corporate executives who they perceive as profiting off of people's suffering.
This event, as tragic as it was, really raises some profound questions about the state of healthcare in our country and the growing divide between the haves and the have-nots.
Absolutely. It goes beyond one individual or one company. It's a symptom of a much larger problem.
And it's a problem that we need to address head-on if we want to create a more just and equitable healthcare system for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
It's a lot to unpack, isn't it, this whole UnitedHealth Group saga?
It really is. And we've only just scratched the surface.
Going back to their acquisition strategy, that vertical integration thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned it could lead to lower costs, but also raise concerns about monopolies. How does that actually play out in real life?
Well, imagine a patient, let's say they need a specific surgery.
Okay.
And UnitedHealth Group, they own the insurance company A&D. They own a network of surgical centers.
Right. They've got their fingers in all the pies.
Exactly. So there's this big financial incentive for them to steer patients towards their own facilities.
Makes sense from a business perspective.
Right. But what if there are equally qualified, maybe even better surgeons outside of their network?
Then the patient might lose out.
They could. They might face higher out-of-pocket costs, maybe even get their coverage denied if they choose to go elsewhere.
So it's not really about what's best for the patient then.
That's the concern, right? It becomes more about what's best for the company's bottom line.
And it's all very opaque, isn't it? Patients often don't know why certain treatments are denied or what their options really are.
Transparency is a big issue in healthcare.
Absolutely. And speaking of lack of transparency, let's talk about that ransomware attack on Change Healthcare. That really highlights how vulnerable our healthcare data is. Do you think that attack could have been prevented if UnitedHealth Group had successfully acquired them? Would a bigger company have been more secure?
It's tough to say for certain. On the one hand, a larger company, they might have more resources, more money to throw at cybersecurity, right?
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, a bigger company is also a bigger target for these hackers.
It's a double-edged sword then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, are we putting too much trust in these huge corporations to protect our sensitive health information?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. We've got to be thinking about data security, about who have access to our data and how it's being used.
Definitely. And it's not just about preventing these big headline-grabbing breaches either. It's about the everyday privacy concerns, the little things that add up.
And then, on top of all of that, you have the human cost, the real-world consequences of these corporate decisions. The high rate of claim denials, people struggling to afford their medications, the feeling of being trapped in a system that seems rigged against them. It's no wonder people are so angry and disillusioned.
And that anger, that frustration, it manifested in a very tragic way with the death of Brian Thompson.
It was a shocking event, no doubt. And the public reaction was, well, it was disturbing.
To say the least, it wasn't just mourning. It was almost celebratory in some corners of the internet.
Like people were glad he was gone.
Exactly. And that speaks to a deep-seated resentment, a sense that the system is broken and that people like him at the top of these massive corporations, they're the ones to blame.
It's a wake-up call, wouldn't you say?
It should be. But whether it actually leads to any meaningful change, that remains to be seen. We've been talking about healthcare reform for decades, and the system seems resistant to change.
Why is that? Why is it so hard to fix this broken system?
Well, there are lots of reasons. You've got powerful lobbying groups protecting their interests. You've got the sheer complexity of the issue itself, and then you've got a lack of political will. It's a tough nut to crack.
But something has to give, right?
Well,
We can't keep going down this path of rising costs, limited access, and growing distrust. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the U.S. healthcare system right now?
affordability is a huge one. Healthcare costs, they just keep going up way faster than inflation and wages. Millions of Americans are struggling to afford basic care.
They're skipping medications, delaying treatment.
Exactly. And that just leads to more serious health problems down the road, which drives costs up even further. It's a vicious cycle.
And it's not just about being able to afford care, it's about being able to access it in the first place.
Right. Access is another major issue. Even if you've got insurance, it doesn't guarantee you timely or quality care. We have shortages of healthcare providers in many areas, especially in rural communities.
I've heard stories of people waiting months for appointments.
It's a common problem. And then there's the issue of quality. The U.S., we spend more on healthcare than any other developed country, but we lag behind in a lot of key health indicators.
Like life expectancy, infant mortality.
Exactly. We're not getting our money's worth. And I think a lot of that has to do with the profit motive driving the system.
It's not about patient outcomes. It's about the bottom line.
And that's got to change. We need a system that prioritizes people over profits, a system that's focused on providing quality, affordable care for everyone.
So how do we get there? What are the solutions?
Well, there are lots of ideas out there. Some people are advocating for a single-payer system where the government provides health care for everyone. Others are pushing for a public option, a government-run insurance plan that competes with private insurers.
And then you've got those who think market-based reforms are the answer.
Right. Things like increasing competition and transparency in the market. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, that's for sure.
But it sounds like we need to start somewhere. Any change is better than no change at this point.
Yeah. I agree. We've got to move beyond the partisan bickering and the ideological divides and have some honest conversations about how to fix this system. The stakes are too high to ignore this problem any longer.
This deep dive has certainly been eye-opening. We've uncovered some serious flaws in our healthcare system.
We have. But amidst all the negativity, I do see a glimmer of hope.
Oh.
How so? Well, for one, we're having this conversation. We're shining a light on these issues. We're exploring potential solutions. And that's a start.
Awareness is the first step towards change.
Exactly. And the more we understand about the system, the more empowered we are to demand better.
It's not just about waiting for the government or the insurance companies to fix it. It's about taking ownership of our health and demanding a system that works for everyone.
Absolutely. And that starts with individual action. Educate yourself, get involved in your community, advocate for change. It may seem daunting, but every voice counts.
I like that. Don't just complain. Do something about it.
Right. Don't underestimate the power of individual action. It can make a real difference.
It's a lot to process, right? All this stuff about UnitedHealth Group.
It is. And I think what's really striking is how it all ties together. The acquisitions, the cyberattack, the public's reaction to Brian Thompson's death, it all points to this larger issue of a healthcare system that's in crisis.
Yeah, you can't ignore that. And it feels like we're at a tipping point. Like something's got to give.
I think you're right. The status quo just isn't sustainable.
So for the average person out there, the person who's just trying to navigate this crazy healthcare system, where do they even begin?
Well, I think the first step is education. You got to understand the system, how it works, who the players are.
Don't just take things at face value.
Right. Do your research. Read articles, listen to podcasts, talk to experts. Become an informed consumer of healthcare.
And I think that includes being more proactive, right? Asking questions, demanding transparency from your providers and insurers.
Absolutely. You have a right to know what's going on with your health, with your care.
And if you don't like what you're seeing, if you're not getting the care you need, you've got to speak up.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, for your loved ones. Contact your elected officials, join advocacy groups, make your voice heard.
Because ultimately, change has to come from the people.
Right.
We can't just sit back and wait for the government or the insurance companies to fix it. We have to demand better.
And we have to work together. This isn't about partisan politics. It's about creating a healthcare system that works for everyone.
I think this deep dive has really driven that point home. It's not just about UnitedHealth Group. It's about the bigger picture, the future of healthcare in this country.
It is. And I hope that people come away from this feeling empowered, not defeated.
Empowered to learn more, to get involved, to make a difference.
Exactly. Because the future of healthcare, it's not predetermined. We have the power to shape it.
That's a good note to end on. So, for everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride.
It has. And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Together, we can make a difference.
And that's it for the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.